What's up, y'all? DT2 Comics Chat here, coming to you with another interview. You won't believe who I have on the show today. Okay, I'm going to introduce you to the original DIY guys, do it yourself. They have created so much content, and I want you to understand that whatever your dream is, you can do it. Don't think it's too hard. Don't think it's out of your reach. You can create the content that you want, and you will be the better after meeting these gentlemen. Let me introduce you to Mr. Randy Cherko and Mr. Jason Feehan.
Hey there.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks so much for having us on your show. We're really excited to be here.
You are quite welcome. All right, fellas, I'd like for you to introduce yourselves to our audience and tell us about some of the things you do, and definitely include some of the geeky things you do. Start with Randy.
Randy can start.
Oh, you want me to take it from here? I can
Yes.
do that. Except that I'm afraid that if I try to list all the geeky things I did, it would pretty much take up the whole show up.
You have to make a comprehensive list.
Let's compress the whole thing. Jason and I actually are people who met when we got involved with music together and ended up forming a band a long time back. And ever since, we've done just tons of creative projects. So this comic is the latest one. We've always been adjacent to the geek community. I'm a longtime gamer myself. Board games, RPGs, and everything else. I got Jason into board games.
Yep, you did.
We still do regular playing all the time, and have always been like a big part of the con community, fan community, fandom, all that kind of stuff. But to be clear, our band was actually very much influenced by the board game community. Actually, one of our top songs was one that was done by a game in board game. Cheap ass games. It was a card cheap ass games that said, "Were all these beer cans here last night?" We ended up writing a song about that, and then doing a whole album for cheap ass games that we distributed through a board game site. So that's how geeky we are. That's the short version. Jason, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, but I was just going to say that was back in, was it 2003? Like we're talking 2002, 2003 era.
Yeah.
You know, when trying to get distribution and getting your name out there for a band was slightly different than what it is today.
Well, you are not adjacent to the geek community. You are a part of the geek community, big time.
We're not geek adjacent.
No, we're not geek adjacent.
Well, we're both adjacent and inside it. You can be both.
You are all in it.
We're deep in it. Okay, I admit it. We're geeks.
Now I'm going to share my screen real quick, and I want our audience to see. This is a comic that we're talking about. You see, it's 93, a college comic about slackers.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got all kinds of stuff going on here. And I'm going to let them explain it to you, but I wanted you to see what we're talking about. And we'll put the link underneath so you can go right to it. But first thing I'm going to ask you guys is, what was your inspiration for the comic?
Right. Okay. So for 93, this goes back to our college days. Somebody who's not on the podcast is my writing buddy, the guy who I created 93 with. His name's Chris Pauly. Really good guy. We both went to Iowa. So we went to University of Iowa. But coincidentally, Randy did as well, which is kind of cool. And after college, there was a couple talks that Chris would approach me and say, "Hey, you know, our whole college experience, you know, out in the middle of nowhere in the Midwest, that there's something there. There's a story there. There's characters there." And so he kind of got me to commit to working with him once a week, and just kind of brainstorming like what could we create out of that. And the weird thing is, this is like 20 years ago, and so we've been writing like nonstop in this world, creating the characters. You know, we plugged in real stories and real moments, because 93 is an episodic long form comic, so it does tell a story from beginning to end. And then there's of course things that are threads that go from episode to episode. that's probably the best way to think about it. So the stories that make up those episodes, like some of those are steeped in things that happened to us, to our friends, and at the time. It's definitely, it's you got college students trying to make decisions, trying to get along with everybody, but it takes place in 1993. So a big part of this strip and the big part of the look and feel is going back to that early 90s, that early 90s music, the early 90s type of comic strip. So you got the 4 panels, like what you would find in a newspaper. For those who don't know what newspapers are, they are like websites that were printed up and delivered to your house every day. But there was a comic section. So that's kind of what we're like, okay, it should be like, we should have the look and feel of the 90s. And, Calvin and Hobbes and Peanuts, of course, was a 4-panel strip and that kind of stuff. And then through the mechanism of the 4-panel strip, and we publish every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we tell a bigger story. There's a much bigger story. So there's this look and feel of the 90s. There's a lot of some of the fun and games around the strip that you see on the website is teaching people how to 90s. That's actually what we call it, how to 90s. It's like talking about like phones that had long cords on them and answering machines and mixtapes and how important mixtapes were. Things that the Generation X grew up with and were steeped in, certainly in the time of 1993. And so that's another piece of this, is that it does have this kind of nostalgic feel for the early 90s. So we're in the grunge period of like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and all that kind of stuff. So there you go. So that's it in a nutshell, what this comic was and how it started. The cool thing is for Randy and me is that it's kind of like we built out this world. Chris and I built out this world, and we found a spot to put our band in it. Our band that Randy was talking about at the intro, called Beatnik Turtle. And so there is an adjacent, we'll borrow that word, a comic adjacent, a spin-off kind of story that's kicking off in a couple months about the band that lives in the garage right next to the main characters here, and their adventures in the early 90s as well. And that kicks off about halfway through this year. I think it's April or May. Yeah, May. Mm-hmm. May, I think it is. That strip kicks off. So we're kind of juggling 2 things, but it's all within the world of 93.
Okay, Randy, you want to add anything?
No, I mean, that's a big part of it. Although, Jason, there might be a moment that going back, you might have forgotten, because your original intent for this was a screenplay in order to basically make a TV show. And the resources for that actually took a lot. But we talked about it. I'm like, hey, what if you did this as a web comic? You're like, what's a web comic? We went into the web comic world and delve into the whole thing, and it actually worked out really well, since you found an artist that was part of your circle that was able to do like sketch designs of all the characters. So as you can see right here, we're on number 87. It actually updates Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So there's a real story here, and there's a lot to get even today, right now. Yeah, see, if you go previous, so go 86, you'll see that there's ads on the bottom. Those ads are inner world ads. They're pretty much, except for the ones that talk about the various things that you can get from us on their website. Everything that you see that's a store is basically a joke, an in-world joke. So we actually added extra entertainment there on the bottom. If people peek at it, it's a little bit hidden, as most people try and ignore ads most of the time. But if you look, you're like, hey, wait a minute. I remember Radio Shack. Of course, Radio Shed's like an off-brand version of it. Yeah. We have a lot of things like that, a lot of jokes like that within it.
And prices that date back to the 90s. Yeah, good point. It was, it's neat that Chris and I, we developed the story in the world and all that kind of stuff without a format in mind. And that's where Randy just talked about, like, oh yeah, maybe it could be a TV show, maybe it could be a screenplay, maybe it could be a book. And then to his point, yeah, it fit best as a comic. And we did have an artist that plays board games that was in our circle. And when I pitched it to him and then he kind of drew out the characters, it was just inevitable. It's like, oh God, we got to do this. The way you design the characters or whatever is just fantastic. It's and so that's how we got the art for this, which is great.
Okay. Now you told us about some of the goodies included in the comic in terms of a lot of ads, a lot of stuff that's time relevant, time dependent, but it's for false companies, but they're right ideas for the time, which is really, really neat because we are talking about 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I want to ask you next is, what were the biggest challenges you found yourself facing in creating this comic?
I would say, let me think on that. This is a very good question. Well, first, like anything, it's finding the right team. So Randy and I, because we were in a band, like we approach everything with a band mentality. It's like all of us versus the world type of thing. And so we had to find an artist, and in the case of Beatnik Turtle, artists that kind of would work on a project like how we kind of tackle projects, where we all kind of roll up our sleeves and we each do different things. We all have different strengths, and so we do those things that we're very strong at, and things that we're not strong at, we pass it over to somebody else who's usually strong at it. So forming that team and getting that that kind of attitude and the that mojo culture, I don't know what you want to call it, was kind of hard at the very beginning just to get that thing up and running. As for the story and ideas and characters and all that kind of stuff, that because we had spent 2 decades just even thinking through this and creating stories and how characters interact and the characters themselves, that was actually easy because we did all our homework. It's not like we came up with this like in the last couple of months and then created a comic. The second thing that I would say that's always challenging when it comes to a web comic is to actually, you don't want to just wake up, create the comic, and then publish it. So there was quite a few years in which we worked on the production so that we can release it on a regular schedule of Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so that the reader can enjoy that routine and follow the story along. So there's a nice back, almost like a year's worth of comics that are already in the what do we call it? The buffer.
Yes.
And so that also is sometimes like what's hard is like you want to release your story right away, but it's so important to actually get your buffer up and to actually have all the art and have everything fine tuned and everything, so that when you actually publish it, it's a quality product, if you call it a product, and that you're proud of it as it goes out to the world. So that was the other thing. It's like having the patience. Now, the good thing was we made sure that there was a pandemic so that everybody just stayed home and they didn't have anything else to do. So that was brilliant. I think that was Chris's point. He's the guy who started the pandemic. And so he kept all of us at home, which was great.
Okay. Before I throw this to Randy, I do want to say,
He just accepts that. Oh yeah, okay, it was Chris. That's right.
I do want to say that that comment you made about the band mentality, your band is the exception and not the rule. That's not how bands work.
Oh.
Bands are always made.
Nobody told us, so we just did it the way we thought it was supposed to be done. No, now that we know, we'll throw stuff out as soon as we finish.
That means you guys are pretty much even-tempered kind of people, because bands are made of people that are factions that are fighting for their way.
Jason and I have seen that.
So you lucked
Yeah.
out if you had some people that were able to stand back to back against the world,
We
because
did.
that ain't normally how I go. Now,
No,
Randy,
that's for real, for real.
if I understand correctly, you designed the website. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, the website, that's something I can take.
Yeah.
The website,
Talk about the challenges you had with that.
they were endless, but
Yeah.
I can give you the high level of what's going on. Part of it is you need to be mobile friendly since more than half the traffic's mobile. And so what you were showing earlier was sort of the horizontal form, which is the kind you'd see on a website. But if you squish it and actually look at this on, actually you can make it do that if you can shrink the window. It will
If you
actually
narrow
change.
the window.
It'll change perspective. I don't know if you can do that on here. If you'd
I
like,
think,
I can share and I can show you how this
okay, yeah, because
some of the innards.
I
Let
don't
me
think
see
I
if
can
I
see
can.
them on.
I'll try and share my screen right here. And screen 2. So tell me if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I will pull up 93 comic. You're going to like this. Those of you who are creators or thinking about doing web comics or things like that. So hopefully you can see it. This is the latest strip. But if I grab the corner and shrink it, at some point it actually becomes vertical.
Yeah.
So that really both the vertical as well as the horizontal version is available on the same site, and it's what's called a responsive site. So we actually had a bunch of changes to make to the site in order to make it really good. So those of you who are creators, you go on the backstage part of it. It starts with tell me if you can see this screen. So here's
Yeah.
good. So here, what you're looking at right now is actually one of the storyboards. Just thinking like a movie, it starts out with like kind of a sketch of what it's going to be like. You can see it on top. The bottom are the areas where we work to eventually finalize it. There's naturally a lot of intervening versions, but you can see how this comes together. What we ended up doing, or what I ended up doing actually, is creating a script that pops out each of these and then rebuilds it both horizontally and vertically so that it can be posted multiple times the same way. And then what we did beyond this was that the site has built in member content. So as we go forward, very shortly, we're going to start releasing a bonus story that comes out every Tuesday at first, and it's probably going to change days in the future, but starting out on Tuesdays, so that people who are members who uh, let's say want to support us or become part of the community, they actually can get extra storylines that come out of it. And that also, we had to carve up the website to allow us to block it out and have a whole membership part of the site so you can become a member. All of these things, none of these are accidents. They all take a long time to think out and do well, and we tested it out. We created more than a year of content posted to the site before we even launched in the first place. So we created a lot ahead of time. And then that includes all of the bonus materials. So we literally have materials that go through 2025 at this point. For the band one, the second comic that we're coming out with, that starts in May, and we really have stuff that goes all the way almost to 2026.
2 or 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now.
it's way out. So like the creator side of this house is not just a question of having fun and doing a story that hopefully grips people with interesting characters that you get involved with and start to want to follow, see if they meet their dreams. We even have like little side notes about all of them. But there's a mechanical and there's the side of it, let's call it the back office side of everything, or back of house if you were at a restaurant, where you have to make sure all of that stuff works really smoothly. We had to spend a long time doing it.
Yeah.
Now, this was actually, as Jason joked about, our pandemic project. So creating this content, working on the mechanical parts of this, the business side of everything is something that we really spent a lot of time with. And it was a really valuable experience in terms of executing it. We're looking forward to doing the next website again. I get to cut and paste this and make some other tweaks to it and roll it out. And what we're doing right now is doing our best to do promotion, which is always, as you know, quite a climb. We have a lot of plans and a lot of ways to get the word out.
Okay, a few things I need to jump in on there.
Go for it. Yeah.
First thing is, go back to the first screen, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. The this.
Or, yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
First thing I want to say is that a very common mistake when people are creating content is not to storyboard because you think you have it all straight in your head.
Yeah.
The advantage of doing a storyboard is it will identify very quickly your extraneous scenes
Yep.
and
Oh yeah.
when you don't transition well.
Right.
Because no matter what you have your characters doing, they need to transition from scene to scene. And then there's general transitions when you move locations. If you don't storyboard that out, you're going to end up with a lot of fluff, a lot of stuff that would be the same as cutting scenes from a movie on the cutting room floor. But when you storyboard that out, you can at least start that process before you create your content.
Oh,
Yeah.
Second thing is that Randy's being way modest here. You have to get yourself an IT guy. He built this website and he did all this stuff by hand because he writes code.
Yeah.
Okay, did you hear me? He writes code. So you're going to have to get somebody that knows their stuff on that level to be able to make it do all the things that they have it do here. That's not just a regular lay person's knowledge. That's expert level knowledge to make this happen. So get a strong IT guy on your team because you'll discover if you're on the creative side, if it doesn't look like you want it to look, and if it can't do what you want it to do, that will frustrate you. So understand that, there's always an uneasy alliance between the shaking of hands between art and commerce. That alliance is necessary, but it's never easy. You have to have both.
Yeah.
If you want to make art and it's just for you and your mom in your basement, that's cool. If you wanted to show it to other people, if you want to make money off of it, if you want it to go anywhere, you're going to have to shake hands with commerce, which means
This
you got
is
to get into marketing
true.
and distribution and all those other things. So you've got to have both. And us artistic people don't like the business side. Okay. So you're going to have to get over that and get some people on your team that know how to do this. Just wanted to throw that out.
Well, you can actually hear this to turn this into the ones that goes sideways in the other direction. This is just so you can see it. Here's the code. So yeah.
I hope you hear that airplane flying over my head because
well,
Now that took a while. Go ahead, Jason.
Well, what Randy's showing is that we do that storyboard stuff. And so to your point, DT, storyboarding is huge. Every moment you write a script, you think you got it really good. You've got the characters' emotions right and all this other kind of stuff. Then you meet the storyboard time where it's like me with Randy Field, who's the artist. And he brings he brings a level of expertise just about camera angles and settings and of course character moments and the limits of comics or the rules of comics I should say, and that has been really helpful. And where that gets teased out is in the storyboard moment. It is really another editing piece. It's like you write the script, then you edit it again in the storyboard, then they do the inking and all that kind of stuff, and then there's the lettering, there's editing there at the lettering stage, and then it finally can be, then you're finally done with it and you're like, okay, this tells the story. And to your point, you have to kind of storyboard because we're limited by we tell the story in 4 panels at a time, and so they do have to be punchy, and you can't have a lot of wasted times at all, or moments at all, or any fluff, as you said. So that's 100%. Now what's interesting is what Randy has helped out was to do vertical, because there's different distribution platforms. Like mobile is all about vertical, and there's like things like webtoons and things like that are all about vertical strips. While the website can be horizontal, like I said, with the early 90s newspapers, black and white. That code that he created a custom thing to snip out everything that you see here and then rearrange it in so many different ways. And that is a Randy thing. That is a guy who enjoys coding and said, no, I can automate this and solve this problem, which is really any good IT guy. That's what they do. Give them a problem, they'll automate it.
Okay, now also I want to throw out for people that are considering doing a 4-panel format. Jason just mentioned the kind of pacing that you have to have.
Mhm.
Okay, your first panel has to introduce the scene or the scenario. The second panel, at least by the second panel, you have to introduce the problem. Third panel has got to be the apex of the tension. And the fourth panel has to be some kind of resolution. So when you do a 4-panel comic, that's the kind of flow you have to have. If you don't have that kind of flow, then you'll start to lose your audience because everything about a good story, a good comic, a good melody is tension and release. Tension and release. When you're telling a story, if you don't have a problem to solve and if you don't have tension between the characters, it won't be interesting. So I'm just trying to give a little more breakdown because both of these gentlemen are being very modest about the sheer amount of work they did. The sheer amount of work it takes to do this, both on the creative end and on the website building end, was huge. And like they said, they've been at it for years. So I want those of you all watching to be encouraged. You can do it, but you got to be willing to put the work in. You got to
That's
become a better storyteller and you got to become a better web builder.
Yeah, the thing that you said about the strips, that's a really good point because that was one of the things I had to unlock when we decided to go down this format was like you if you tell an entire story, you introduce the characters, like you said, you have some sort of a there's the hero's journey. There's all these wonderful narrative. Save the cat. There's all these different narrative formulas and all that kind of stuff. When you get down to it, you need that for an episode. You need that for a story. You need that for the long form. You have to have a beginning, middle, and end. What's interesting is my aha moment was realizing that that same structure, beginning, middle, and end, where you have some resolution, all has to happen on this micro level, this
Yes.
quantum level of just the 4 strips. Now we went with 4 strips. Some people do 3 strips. Other people do like 6, 6 or 8. It still is the same concept. Within whatever your release, you want to have that narrative. There has to be a mini narrative just within that strip, and that's a very good point. So there's the greater one, and then in microcosm, there's the short one. If you don't have that, then it is fluff, and you can really go off the rails. So every one of our 4 strips is hitting those type of beats, and it either ends with something that's funny, obviously, some sort of a joke or some character insight, or something dramatic. So it's
Well,
like,
think
whoa,
about
I got to tune in, on Wednesday to find out what happens next. So good
think
point.
about classic strips. Think about Peanuts. Think about Calvin and Hobbes, and think about any pulp fiction superhero comics. They all follow that formula. The Phantom, Dick Tracy, when Batman and Superman were in strips, you got a scenario, you got a problem, you got a tension, and you got to
Yeah,
have some release, or else. And then it's good if you get a release and a cliffhanger, because
yeah,
then
Right.
now they have to come back. So
that's right.
Right. You're looking at on the shared screen. You're actually looking at a script for the forthcoming, and in fact, this isn't even at the beginning of the forthcoming thing. This is like this isn't going to come out till 2020, late 2025. So you're seeing stuff way in the future, but we've carved it up. It looks like a screenplay in just about every way, except we've added emotions because we have an artist that has to draw both the setting. So you'll see the description here, as well as the characters in each panel have a different expression. And naturally, each character can only have one expression per panel. So you can't give them something that's happy and something that's sad and expect them to change and transition. You have to think about it. So
So
what you're
yeah, that technique, Randy, is one that we imposed on ourselves to make sure that we were thinking through things and brainstorming and writing and everything, that we weren't creating dialogue or character moments that could not be captured within one strip. You can't have 2 different emotions. It can't go from surprise to angry or surprise to happy or whatever in the same, or happy to sad in the same strip, to your point. And with that, we learned with the artists, of course. And then this was our own personal technique. They were like, wait, if we force ourselves as writers to think this way and put in like the emotion, then we'll know if it's broken. If it's like Jason's peeved, Tom is confused, Jason's happy. like, well, that if that all happens in the one panel, then we've broken it and we have to rewrite. But that's a good point, Randy. That was a good technique.
And I mean, the rest of the thing behind the scenes is, of course, that we have a lot of handoffs, and when you have a team, you have to do that type of thing. So Jason would give me the scripts, I would run my cropper against it and create all the different versions of it. And just so you can see that the output, you can see there's a square version as well. If I hit this and it goes to my other window, you can see there's a square version of it. There's a horizontal version, social versions. So we have this ready to go to help promote things and everything else. So here's like a far future thing. I'll peek at it. And so lots of forethought for each stage and everything else. And I mean, I know that in some cases, and I've run into it because I've done the convention game for many years, and people are like, how do I do this? How do I do that? And they realize at some point that they're basically carrying a weight larger than they could pull anywhere. And if you're finding yourself like that, it's probably because you've taken on too much. And it's also possibly that you haven't gotten a team around it. Because like the code stuff, anybody who looks at this and goes crazy and thinks, oh my goodness, I can't even think about this kind of stuff. Well, it's something that I did as part of my day gig, and so I'm practiced at it and I can do that. If that's not your thing, you have to find someone who can. If you like doing promotion, that's cool. If that's something you want to hand off to someone else, the thing that we've talked about, I know we didn't mention our books too much here, David, anything about it, but we've written books to musicians saying, here's how you can do it on your own. And on your own doesn't mean alone. It never means do it alone. Do it yourself doesn't mean do it alone. I can only repeat that so many times. Get it in your head. Do it yourself means decide what to do, know what to do, and then actually farm it out so that each of these things can get done. And if you do it the right way, like what you're seeing right here, the screenplay, you write a draft of it, and then the next thing you do is you hand it to other people and you say, what ideas do you have? It gets polished, it gets smoother, it gets better. So as you add more people to collaborate on a creative project, if you do it the right way, you'll actually get some shine on it because all these people will contribute.
Well, I'm one of those people that where I see all that, I'm like, oh my Lord, what is this? Because I can make some homemade pizza, but I can't code an emoji from a stick of peanut butter. So yeah, you definitely have to have somebody on your team that knows what they're doing. Because I'm the writing guy, and I know a lot of people that are watching this video. I know you're the idea person. I know you're the artist. I know you're the dialogue person. You got to get, is what Randy said, you got to get a team around the other things that are necessary. And you want to find somebody where that is their strength, because it never hurts when you're in your strength. You never get tired when you're in your strength. You enjoy doing what
That's
you're
right.
good at. And so you got to put a team together to do that. Now, let me ask you this final question.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to do it all over again, what would you change?
Jason, come on, you've got this one.
Well, I guess I'd change my parents, and I would be born in. Oh, you're talking about the comic. I don't know if I would change anything, because everything the whole journey that we.
It's a journey. It's a process. Yeah.
From hey, this should be a webcomic. All right, I got to figure out what webcomics all are. Well, Randy knows them left, right, and center. But I had to do some research and understand it, and so did Chris. I wouldn't take any of that away, because it all kind of led to certain decisions and helped us build a stronger story, and so we learned a lot of stuff. And yeah, there were some setbacks and some. We take a couple steps back, and then we one step forward, a couple steps back, kind of thing. But I don't think I would change anything, because that's how we got to where we are. I don't have a very cool answer.
Yeah, it's the new stuff that we're doing that follows the learnings that we've done.
Yeah.
So it's fast now. And if we hadn't gone through the pain, we wouldn't have run it. I mean, the same thing with the website and everything else. But I will say this: it's like, if you are, I actually don't want to daunt people too much by saying, if you can't write the code, then and you can't do this kind of stuff, then don't even try. I think that the secret to being able to use technology, no matter what your skill level, is to use it out of box. Like if there's a system out there that will do web comics, and there's a bunch. Like if you want to follow in our footsteps, you can go to Webtoons, and they have something called Canvas, and you just use their system. You don't have to do anything custom. You just upload it and go. You have a slightly less options. We wanted to do certain very specific things, and that was rewarding to do, even though it took me many, many hours to get it to do what I wanted it to and bend it to my will. And Jason, like going back to you on everything related to the story writing that you refined over time, that you learned how to do. If you hadn't gone through that, you wouldn't be so smooth at writing the current later version of the story that you're at.
Correct.
Do you have anything to add to that?
No, but that's a very good point, and it becomes a muscle, so you have to work out. And so every time we went through these iterations, and anytime we had these learnings, you just get better at it. You're putting in the hours, and you're just improving. So yeah, no, very good point.
Okay, so I wanted to help my listeners. What they're talking about is developing a macro visionistic approach, meaning that every experience, there are no bad experiences, that even the setbacks and the challenges and the hard times are a part of the process to get to the end. So for those of you out there that have that idea that's been burning in your heart for a while, but you're fearing, or you're fretting, or you're being self-defeating in terms of your thinking, that's a part of the process. It's overcoming those challenges. It's learning how to, as Randy said, bend it to your will, bend it and make it do what you want it to do.
Yeah.
Do that. That's what's going to help you grow, no matter what part of the process you are on or you contribute to.
That's right.
No,
All right, fellas, well, I want to thank you so much for being on today. This has been highly informative, and I know it's going to really help out those that are trying to do similar projects. So thank you again. Thank you, Randy, and thank you, Jason.
Thank you, GT.
Happy to. Thanks a lot. Thanks for plugging our 93comic.com. Feel free to go there, by the way. Totally free. Enjoy the story. That's the number one thing that we'd love to see everybody do, is jump on, and then be on the lookout in May as we come up with another side story you could follow as well. That's what we're doing this for, is for you to enjoy the creativity that we put together.
All right. Where can we find both of you online?
That's the best place to go right now, 93comic.com. Seriously. We have other sites. We're going to be redoing them as we release the second story. And so we've got a lot of great new music coming out and everything else, but start everything there, 93comic.com.
All right. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.